to learn the way of the Predaplant? Well, good news for you, you've come to the perfect video. In this video, I'm going to showcase one of my branded Predaplant lists. This is an updated version. Before Power of the Elements, I did have a different list that managed to top an invitational at my locals, although I tried that list at locals after Power of the Elements and it did pretty poorly. So, this is the updated list. I'm going to go through the actual list itself, some test hands, and then some weaknesses of the deck, and what you could possibly do to try and fix some of those weaknesses. So, let's get into it, shall we? Starting us off is the branded package, starting with triple branded fusion. This is a main combo tool in your overall starting turn. It can not only dump Predaplants off of multiple cards, you've got multiple ways to do that, but it also leads into your stalls and is very easily searchable. This deck searches fusion spells incredibly well, which means you can toss it in multiple different fusion engines, or the branded fusion is probably the best. Next is Albion. Albion allows you to dump some of your branded spell traps from deck, specifically Branded Retribution. This card will allow you to recycle your branded fusions, although you can only do it once. But it is incredibly easy to do, because it's not only searchable, you can also dump it off of Albion, obviously. Then we have our 2 required copies of Albaz. This is literally required. You should have seen this coming. Then we have Stay Sailor Romarin. This is one of my more favourite cards. This is one of my preferred cards to dump with Branded Fusion, because it is basically just a dump. When it's set in grave by card effect, you can send a level 5 or lower plant from deck to grave, which, if you're not going for a Scythe Lock, this is what you should be doing most of the time. Next up is some of the Shaddolls. We have Nay Shaddol Aerial and Shaddol Beast. Both of these this is to be sent off from Construct, and Beast is what you send for Branded Fusion. The basic combo goes for the Shaddol package. You use Branded Fusion to send Albaz and Beast to summon Lubellion. Then you activate Lubellion's effect to pull back Beast, and either Albaz or Lubellion itself to make either Construct or Winder, depending on what you shuffle back. Next up is Triple Keeper of Dragon Magic. This card is technically a part of the branded package, but it is your starter and should be your normal summon on every turn 1 if you can. Because it not only gets you to your Predaplant place, it can get you to even more if you decide to throw in other fusion cards. I don't believe it cannot get you Super Poly, which is a bit of an issue, but you've got other ways to get Super Poly, so that's fine. Next up is Tri-Brigade Mercuria. This patches up one of the holes in the deck, because if you control, say, if you have this in your hand and you control Albion or Mirror Jade, whatever, and your opponent Nibiru's you, because that does happen sometimes, you can just stop it with Mercuria. It is an incredibly fun card to use. Then we have Artifact Scythe. If you don't know why this is in there, then go look up what Scythe does. Read it now. It's on the screen right now. Branded Lost is a bit of insulation for your plays. It also allows you to add Albion to your hand, which means you can then refresh your branded fusions without having to search for another. Branded Expulsion, I almost said Separation then, allows you to set up your Scythe Lock, because you can tribute Mirror Jade or whatever. As long as you have Scythe Engrave and this set, you have a Scythe Lock. You can do that in standby and you pretty much win. Branded Banishment is another thing, is basically another archetypal Super Poly. Branded has a lot of these, but this is the main one you want to be setting. It also banishes instead of sending the cards to grave, so it can be pretty decent against tier. And then, as I said, Branded Retribution recycles your branded fusions, and is also a negate. Yes, it is a negate, but it is very situational. Next up, Predaplant over Scorpio. This is an incredibly infamous card, because it has been able to search many a fusion engine in the past. More specifically, Brilliant Fusion. That's banned now. If it wasn't banned, you would probably see me running it right now. Then you have his partner in crime, Darlingtonia Cobra. You summon this off of Scorpio, search for fusion spell cards. Nothing more, nothing less. You can only do this once per duel, which is why it's only one copy. Next up, we have our dump target from Romarin. This is Biblis. Biblis, when sent to grave, allows you to search a Predaplant monster, and if your opponent controls a monster with a predator counter, oh wait, no, if a monster with a predator counter is on the field in general, you can just special summon it. This means it can become easy fusion material for Super Poly or Predaplant Fusion, whatever. Next up, double Predaplant Kilometer Sundew. This card is a Super Poly on legs if your opponent has predator counters on their monsters, which they probably will be if you're playing this deck. And it also turns them dark, which is incredibly fun to do. Like, you have no idea how fun it is to make a Triffy by normal summoning Kilometer Sundew. Then we have our search target off of Biblis. This is Bucolicular. This is never being summoned. It's always being put in the pendulum scale because it is another fusion spell card, basically. You mainly use this to go into Drago's Stapelia at the end of your combo. Next up is Triantis, which is just there in case you need a way to make some of your fusions and you don't have a fusion spell. Or you do have a fusion spell and it's Bucolicular. Next up is Instant Fusion. This is normally what you're searching up for Keeper Dragon Magic turn 1, as it starts off it continues most of your plays and can start up longer combos. Keep continuing with the fusion cards, we have Predaplant Fusion. This is an incredibly niche fusion card, which I don't tend to use often, but it is nice to have, and it has saved my ass multiple times. Its main use is going into Tri-Fire Veritum, which is probably my favourite card in the deck, if I'm being honest. Then we have Super Poly. I should not need to explain what Super Poly does. This is incredibly funny to do just to interrupt combos and stuff. Then we have, going back to the Predaplant stuff, we have a Predaplanting. This not only dumps a Predaplant for cost, but it also places predator counters on everything your opponent controls, which is essentially a board wide negate. Then we're on to more generic things. We have our board breakers. Well, board breakers, that includes Super Poly. We have Dark Ruler No More. Maining this because against most decks you need to win game 1. If not, you are losing. Then we have Called by the Grave, which is more insulation. Which is technically this isn't a board breaker. This is more insulation, like Branded Lost would be. Next, onto the extra deck, onto the branded fusions, we have Brigand. This is mainly sent as cost for Mirror Jade's effect, because in the end phase, it can search you for Mercurium. Double Albion. This is normally what you're summoning off a branded fusion first, and then you use it to go into Mirror Jade. Then we have Rebellion, which is part of the Shadol package. Mirror Jade is part of your end board and is a free ban. Not free ban. It is a non-targeting banish once per turn. Then we have Winder and Construct. Winder is a second win condition, second, third, fourth, another win condition on top of Scythe and Predator counters and Super Poly. There's a lot of these. Onto the Predaplant fusions and the Starving Venoms, we have double Predaplant and Hilo Melodies. This is your instant fusion target. I guess Winder's one too, but this is your main one. This is the one you want to be going into because it searches you Predaplanting. It can summon over Scorpio or Darlingtonia Cobra from deck. Normally going for Darlingtonia Cobra. You want to keep those summons down. It reads like a custom card, if I'm being honest. It is incredibly good. Then we have Predaplant Drago's Stapelia. This is another part of your end board and is a soft once per turn negate, essentially, which you can use and then if you have Super Poly set, you can Super Poly into another one for another negate. Then we have the OTK machine, Predaplant Trio Veritum. The reason I call this the OTK machine is pretty obvious. It gains attack equal to the total original attack for monsters with a predator counter. It is also a negate against extra deck summons, which can be pretty devastating in certain decks such as Hero. I would know because there's a lot of hero players at locals. It also summons itself back if your opponent controls a monster with Predator counter. It is that easy. Next up, these are pretty much just two super poly targets. We have Starving Venom Fusion Dragon, which its effect does not really matter except for when it's destroyed, because it is a board wipe. Next, we have Starving Venom Predapower Fusion Dragon. This is a negate if there's a Predator counter on field at all. It is not a destroying negate, but you contribute your opponent's monsters for it, so it technically counts. Onto the side deck, we have Triple Nibiru for certain matchups, such as, again, Hero. Tank, this is just a decent going second tool, and is pretty easy to set up. You don't even need to set it up, you just need to go second. Then we have Necroworld Banshee and Zombie World. This is specifically for flu. You set Necroworld Banshee off of Branded Fusion, so you can then set a Zombie World from deck. Next onto the Floodgates, we have a triple anti-spell, triple dimensional barrier, triple Tikaboo. I should not really need to explain most of these. Anti-spell shuts down a lot of the meta right now. Dimensional barrier not so much, but it's still incredibly useful to have. Tikaboo can also shut down a majority of the meta. Sprite especially. Okay, onto the test hands. In this test hand specifically, we have drawn not only Branded Lost and Dark Ruler. We're going first. Branded Lost is fine. For going first, you probably need it to insulate some of the plays. Dark Ruler is pretty much a brick going first, but it's always a chance to draw it. And then Darling Tonya Cobra, you basically can't do anything with this if you draw it. So we'll have to try something a little different. We're going to normal summon Dragon Magic, we're going to discard Darling Tonya Cobra, search for Instant Fusion. Instant Fusion for Ambula. Ambula effect. Search for Predaplant. Ambula effect. And we're going to need a way to get to our fusion spell, so I don't know what's okay, second climate. Activate climate, this is pretty weak end board, but is the most you can make. Dragon's Rebellion, and that's essentially all you can do, except Predaplanting. This is technically a max negate, but it is not incredibly useful. Let's try that again, shall we? Here we've drawn double Branded Fusion, Super Poly, Clammy, and one of our Albines. This is a fine hand, we can do something with this. Go to Branded Fusion for Albion. I'm going to send Albine hand. And Scythe, because with this hand specifically, you want a Scythe lock. This is incredibly hard to deal with board, actually. I don't think we can Scythe lock this turn. But we can make Mirror Jade and pass. Then we can set Super Poly. Yeah, that's it basically. Let's hope we get a better one. This is unplayable. You cannot do anything with this hand. You have to set 2 and pass. This is your end board with this hand. It does brick a lot. This is more usable. So you're going to normal summon the Instant Fusion for Ambula. Yeah, Ambula effect. Since we have Branded Retribution, we can potentially search for Albion at some point in the combo. So we want to start by going list, then Darling Tonya Cobra. Darling Tonya Cobra, grab Branded Fusion. Big list, grab Refill. Branded Fusion. For Albion. Scythe and Albas, because we don't need to dump Royal Buffer, which means we Albas. Get some defense. Then we're going to put Bufo in Benscale. We're going to activate Bufo. Fusing into Dragon's Tupelia using these two cards. We're going to summon this in. Then we're going to set Predaplant, which should have actually lost. We're going to set Predaplanting. We're going to set Branded Retribution. Then we're going to proceed to end phase. In end phase, we're going to activate Albion. And we're going to set Branded Expulsion. Now in the standby phase of the next turn, we can scythe out the opponent and pretty much win. Although if you're going to, if this is your only hand in time, you do not want to go for instant fusion, even if it is your only play at some point. This hand is far more workable. If we had another fusion engine in here, we could probably search that as well off of Dine's on your Cobra, because we already have the Branded Fusion. And we already have the Mercury as well, so that's more insulation of a place. So we can keep a Dragon Magic. We're going to discard Pitless for this, so we can search for Bufo quickly. So we're going to grab Instant Fusion, activate Bufo, no Bufo, activate Pitless, grab Bufo Follicular. We're going to activate Instant Fusion. Go. This deck is pretty linear, as you can tell. Search for Time. Now we can search for super polarization. Which we're going second, because we're going first. We have a discard in Dark Ruler. Then we can Branded Fusion. You can probably tell where this end board is going. So Branded Fusion into Albion, using this, and the Scythe. Use Albion. Albion to Merjade. That. The reason you want to be bashing Ambulo is because if you want to use Albion's effect in Grave, you need to be able to make Merjade without banishing it. So now, we can Bufo. We can Bufo effect. Sowing Drago. Using these two monsters, we're going to set Predaplanting, set Super Pollen, go into end phase, and trigger Albion. For Branded Expulsion. Now that is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 interruptions. Well, we're back at the list, and quite frankly, this deck dies to some of its own side deck cards. This deck can die to Nibiru, it can die to Anti-Spell and Dimensional Barrier. There can only be once and hit it as much, but it can stop its plays in its tracks if it's timed well. Because you can be stuck with Ambulo and keep your Dragon Magic on board and just don't be able to do anything. Dimensional Barrier stops it from doing its plays altogether. Anti-Spell hinders it a lot because then you obviously can't activate Branded Fusion on the turn you add it. Nibiru is Nibiru. You summon a lot in this deck. Nibiru just ends you. But otherwise, I'd say the deck is pretty strong. And I'd honestly recommend it. It's pretty budget as well. The most expensive card in here, I think, is probably Nibiru. Yeah, Nibiru is the most expensive card in this deck at around £16 a copy from Brothers of Legend, which is the copy I have. But otherwise, it's really budget. I highly recommend it if you're trying to play something fun, competitive, and cheap.